What a simple act. What a simple way to give. What a simple way to say to someone, even that total stranger, you know what? I care about you. And that's what God wants us. That's what God expects us to be. We're part of one humanity. We need to understand that. That's the way we need to live our lives. And too many times we're caught up in what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of this? But when we truly start to give, that's when we start to live. Real living starts with giving.
Welcome to the Game Day Everyday Podcast with Coach Bud Boughton. When you make every day a game day, you live a life that matters. Here's Coach Bud.
Well, hello, this is Bud Boughton, back for another episode of Game Day Everyday, leading a life that matters. How can we take just an ordinary day and do something special that's going to turn it into that sort of game day experience we all understood and were excited about when we were an athlete or a coach? There is nothing like game days. And as I've talked before in these podcasts, really, that all starts by bringing the presence of Jesus Christ into our life, into our actions, into our behaviors. And that's what makes the game day experience out of any ordinary day. Now, today I'm actually going to take you back in time a little bit. I'm going to tell you a story that I actually highlighted in my first book called The Missing Piece, Our Search for Security in an Insecure World. And this story takes place in 1989. I'm going through a very difficult divorce at the time. I'm not feeling good about myself. I'm going through a divorce that I, at the time, didn't want. I didn't understand. I was struggling. And I'm on the road ready to make a sales call on a bank in Springfield, Illinois. And I was staying at a hotel the night before, and it was about 11 p.m. at night. And as I was getting ready to go upstairs to my room, I noticed a commotion in the hotel's video arcade room as I was walking through the lobby. And it seemed that a security guard who was an older gentleman, I say older now, he's younger than I am now, but he was probably 65 years old at the time. He's having a bit of a problem getting three teenagers to leave the arcade. And he was trying to close it up. And not being shy, I walked over and said to the security guard, "Hey, is there a problem here, officer?" He said, No, I got it under control. These kids are going to leave. Well, I looked at the three boys. They weren't the best looking guys, dirty clothes, kind of sloppy in appearance, long hair, unsightly facial hair, kind of resembled the adolescent attempts at mustaches and goatees. And the boys shuffled by the security guard and me, and as they headed for the door, and the security guard was following them, I just didn't like the looks of the situation. So I said, "You know what? I could use some fresh air. Hope you don't mind. I'm going to walk out there with you." So I walked out with the security guard. Once we were in the parking lot, the boys walked more briskly, started to joke with one another. They snickered at whatever they found funny. And once they left the parking lot and were off the property, they immediately turned around and began to call the security guard and me every obscenity you can think of. I mean, they're grabbing their crotches. They're making obscene hand gestures. They were as foul-mouthed as any teenagers I had been around in a long time. And, finally they turned and went on their way, and the old man turned and looked at me and he said, "Boy, what a bunch of derelicts." And I got to tell you, at the time I agreed with him. But as I went up to my room that night, I thought about the three boys. And I thought, man, why were they so angry? What had them so ticked off to the point giving this security guard a hard time and then blasting us with obscenities the way they did? I mean, were they always like that? Is that really who they were? And then I said to myself, geez, where were their parents? Where did these boys live? What are they doing out on a night at 11 o'clock on a school night? Well, the evening ended, but that wasn't the end of the story. You see, the next morning I was in the hotel's restaurant, drinking coffee, reading the morning paper, and I looked up in the crowded restaurant, filled with business people, and then I saw them. There they were on the other side of the restaurant, those three boys I had encountered the night before were sitting there. Same dirty clothes, same sloppy appearance, each with a cup of coffee in front of them. And I called my waitress over and I told her, hey, do me a favor, go over to that table, tell the boys they can order whatever they want off the menu for breakfast. But I also instructed her to tell them they had a friend in the restaurant who wanted to buy them breakfast, but she could not tell them who it was. I went back to my newspaper and only glanced at the boys occasionally. Pancakes, a Belgian waffle, one ordered steak and eggs, were all delivered to the table, and as they ate, they curiously looked around the restaurant, trying to solve the mystery. And suddenly, one boy made eye contact with me, and then he quickly looked away. And as he continued to look away from me, it became apparent that he was telling his friends that the guy that had helped the security guard the night before was in the restaurant. Suddenly, all at the same time, they decided to stare at me, I guess in an act of intimidation. And instead, I just smiled back at them, nodded my head, and got up to leave. And as I walked by their table, I said, boys, I hope you enjoyed your breakfast, and I just kept walking. And as I finished checking out at the front desk, I turned to see the three boys standing in the lobby. They approached me, and one of the boys asked, can we talk? And I said, sure. What do you want to talk about? They approached me, and one of the boys asked, can we talk to you? And I said, sure. What do you want to talk about? The tallest of three boys spoke first, and he said, are you a cop? I said, no, I'm not a cop. Why do you even ask that? And he said, well, last night you got involved with that security guard and kicking us out of here, and then this morning you buy us breakfast. I mean, that doesn't make sense. What are you up to? What kind of game are you playing? And apparently they thought I had some agenda and clearly wanted to know what it was. And I asked them, do you guys have about 15 minutes? And when they answered yes, I said, let's go over where we can sit down and talk for a few minutes. So we went and sat down. And I began to talk to him about the incident the night before, and I told him that the security guard is probably doing the job part-time to make ends meet. And the last thing he ever wanted was a confrontation or a problem like he had encountered with them the night before. And then I asked him, I said, geez, you guys are of age. Do you have grandparents? They all nodded their heads. And I said, hey, that guy is probably somebody's grandfather. Now, how would you feel if someone treated your grandfather the way you guys were treating him last night? They kind of looked at the floor and shuffled their feet. I think they got the message. And then I asked him, what are you doing in the hotel's video arcade room at 11 p.m. on a school night? And why aren't you guys in school now? All three of them said they had dropped out. So then I asked them, why and how did you think you're ever going to make it in this world, at minimum, without a high school education? I mean, I did everything I could to counsel them in a positive, caring way, with the hope they might see that they each had value, and it was important that they realize that. I wanted them to see that even I, a total stranger, cared enough about them on one morning of their lives to at least buy them breakfast and talk with them about what's important in their life. And you know, we ended up talking about 30 minutes, and as the conversation ended, I asked them to make me two promises. I said, first, I'm going to ask each of you when next time you're in here and you see that security guard, that you apologize to him. Just go up to him, tell him you made a mistake, you shouldn't have acted the way you did, and you apologize. And second, I ask each of them at least to consider getting back into school. And as I got up to leave, they shook my hand, smiled, and thanked me. Now, for all I know, my efforts might have totally been in vain. For all I know, those three kids might have left the hotel that morning. So what a sucker That guy buying us breakfast and wasting his money. I mean, I don't know what they said or how they felt. I really have no idea. But you know what? That's okay. I did what I did because I thought it was worthwhile and the right thing to do at the time. I chose to give. I chose to give of myself, and there was nothing I was going to get from it. So I took the chance to reach out to them. And you know what? I can't describe the feelings I had inside myself, but from taking the time to try and help them, to give of myself, I mean, these feelings were wonderful. Suddenly, I mean, strangely, I had value again. I'm going through a divorce. I feel like the biggest loser in the world, but suddenly I had value again, and I mattered. I felt good about myself for doing what I did. And I remember thinking to myself as I drove to my sales call that morning, I wonder if this event, my intercession with those three boys at this moment in their life, was one of the reasons God put me on this planet. I mean, is that possible? Is that part of the plan for me that God had? But the whole incident proved to be an amazing, inspiring learning experience. Now, today, that was 1989. 11, we're talking over 30 years later. I cannot even remember what bank I was calling on that day or what happened in the sales call, but I will always remember my breakfast and sitting down with those three boys. And I hope and I pray it may be something I said that day, something I did, a question I asked, anything might have in some small way made a difference for one of those three boys. But no matter what the outcome might be, I had given of myself in my own way, and in return had received so much more. This is the gift we all receive when we choose to give. Now, here we are, headed to Christmas, after we've just celebrated one of the most glorious holidays of the year, Thanksgiving. But isn't it a shame it's Thanksgiving Day when it should be, in my opinion, Thanksgiving season? Or really, shouldn't we be about Thanksgiving every single day of our life? You want the game day experience? You want to feel good about life? You want to feel good about who you are? You want to be excited about living? Let me tell you, that starts when you give of yourself. And this is a time of year when we should be giving. And it doesn't matter who it's to. It could be our spouse. It could be a sibling. It could be a friend. It could be a coworker. It could be a total stranger. And it doesn't matter what it is. It can be as simple as a smile with a stranger and a welcoming comment. Or it could be buying somebody their cup of coffee at Starbucks when they're standing in line in front of you. And as they pull out their credit card, you can say, hey, put that card away. I'm buying your coffee today. What a simple act. What a simple way to give. What a simple way to say to someone, even that total stranger, you know what? I care about you. And that's what God wants us. That's what God expects us to be. We're part of one humanity. We need to understand that. That's the way we need to live our lives. And too many times we're caught up in what's in it for me? What am I going to get out of this? But when we truly start to give, that's when we start to live. Real living starts with giving. And you know, that's something that in the holiday season we need to think about. It's something we should think about really every day. And I've recently been reading a book, and I've kind of jumped around in it, but it's a wonderful book by a U.S. Senator from Nebraska. It's called Them, Why We Hate Each Other and How to Heal. And it's written by Ben Sasse, who is a senator from Nebraska. I think he's a fifth generation Nebraskan. But he talks about in his book at the very end when it speaks to how we heal. How do we heal? You know, we hate each other. Well, that's no way that our country is going to be better off. That's no way mankind is going to be better off. Nothing good comes from hate. How do we love one another? How do we reach out to one another? And he writes in his book, we are relational beings and we're meant for community. We're meant to be rooted, not rootless. We're meant to be together, pursuing goals and dreams in common. But these are much harder to come by in an increasingly transient world. And I think about that. My two sons, neither of them live in the same city where I am. As a matter of fact, the whole time they've been in their adult life, they have lived in a different city. And it makes it difficult for me to sometimes see them as often as I want to, or to be with them for special holidays and things. We're a very transient society. People have moved for career opportunities and whatnot, and so forth. And really, when you think about that, because our families used to be together more than that, this is an economic and a social revolution that's really transforming life as we've known it in the United States for at least certainly a century, maybe a century and a half before now. But you know what? He points out a final statement in the book. The book is titled Them, Why We Hate Each Other and How We Heal. And at the very end of the book, he does speak and saying, you know, government is not going to solve this, because ultimately it's not legislation we're lacking. It's the tight bonds that give our lives meaning, happiness, and hope. It's the habits of heart and mind that make us neighbors and friends. And I read that word neighbors and I immediately think of the Great Commission, which was to love God with all our heart, with all our soul, and with all our mind. But the second, which is much like the first, to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. And he speaks to that very fact when he says, it's the habits of heart and mind that make us neighbors and friends. And at the end of the day, this is directly from his book, and I quote, at the end of the day, it's love. And when a bunch of them are joined by love and by purpose, they can become we. End of quote. Think of that. What if this holiday season, for all the people we see, for all the people we don't know, for all the people that are different than us, if we think of them now as they, but if we try to reach out to them with love and with purpose, they can become we. You know what? We are all one humanity. You want the game day experience. You want to truly be alive. You want to be excited about the opportunities that life provides. It starts when we turn to the Word, when we get into the good book, when we just take the simplest lessons that Jesus gave to us, not only in word, but by his example. In this holiday season, I encourage each of you listening to this podcast to ask yourself, how can I reach out? How can I give a little bit more? Because when we give, boy, that's when we know it's a game day. That's when life gets really good. Because ultimately, that's what God wants us to do. That's where He wants us to be, because when we are together, we are one in God. What a great world this can be when we make the choice to give. Hey, didn't mean to get too heavy on you. Hope you enjoyed the message today in that story, but anyways, that's another episode of Game Day Every Day. I hope you're having a great holiday season. I hope you're having a wonderful Thanksgiving season. Let's give thanks every day. Until next time, this is Bud Boughton. Game Day Every Day, leading a life that matters, and certainly you matters. Hey, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Game Day Every Day with Coach Bud Boughton. Connect for more at budboughton.com. Be sure to subscribe to the Shine.fm podcast channel for new episodes.